Hey, what's up, people? Well, everything I say with my full chest. Let's get into it. So, you remember that movie Blood Diamond? It might be on a case of blood Coltan. You know, if you don't know what I mean, I'm gonna explain it to you. Just give me some time. So, what's happening? Why do I say blood Coltan? So, some of you might know the country called the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's a country in Africa, right? I think central, close to East Africa, not in East Africa, Central Africa. So there's been a lot of humanitarian situation going on in the DRC. And the whole conflict stems from mineral resources. Now, the DRC is a country that is wealthy in terms of minerals. You talk about diamond, you talk about gold, you talk about some lithium, you talk about coltan, which is the main thing, right? So why is coltan so important? Because coltan is used in your cell phones, right? So coltan is used in various like digital things, cameras, cell phones, even your computer, chips, for cars, and just for so many things. So you might be losing that. Maybe. Might not be, but maybe. But here's why the DRC matters a lot to the world. Because of coltan and just because of various other things, and why the country even matters more to Africa, right? So right now, like I mentioned, there are humanitarian crises going on. Who is involved in this? The March 23 movement, popularly known as M23. Now, this is like a rebel militia group within the DRC. It's led by the Tutsi. Now, this group, they were formed basically, what they claim is to protect the minority because they felt that the minority population were not getting a piece of the national cake, which is the case in most African countries, if you know what I'm saying. But in this situation, they formed a militia group, and the militia group, there was a settlement and they died. They slowly, their temper was calm. But because they claimed that the DRC government didn't uphold the peace agreement, so there has been an insurrection of their activities. And it's been making the news since the beginning of the year, right? We've had a lot of refugees in the DRC, so many displaced people within the DRC, and just crisis going on that humanitarian need is like really needed in the country. That's one. But when it comes to mineral resources, which is why a lot of things happen in the world, it's good we pay attention, right? So one, the M23 is involved, the government of the DRC, of course. And again, there's another third party, which is kind of fascinating to me, which is the great country of Rwanda. Shout out to PK. PK is one of Paul Kagame. He's a great president, I would say. He's one of the good presidents in Africa. Now, you might not like him, but, his work is manifested as the country is almost one of the best countries in Africa. And everyone that comes from Rwanda that I speak to, they love this man. So it's interesting to see their involvement in it. Now, of course, there's been a lot of allegations as to why they're involved. And there's a lot of speculations that there's interest in the mineral resources within the country, which is why the government of Rwanda is involved in this. But let's try and find out why. So now, like I've mentioned, so you have the DRC, you have M23, you have the Rwandan government. So now, the M23, of course, they're involved because they feel like, the natural resources is not getting with, the minority group. They're protecting their people and, they want the resources, they want a share of the resources. Now, they have been in control of the resources, which I think is not the way to go. Like, you can't have a militia group controlling the resources in a country. And the way these resources are kind of, mined in the country is very informal. Like, you will see pictures of like people just digging holes, and there's no like a modernized way of doing things, like a formal way, like a nationalized way of mining these resources and making sure that it's used for the benefit of the country. It's all like informal and it's just chaotic, if you ask me. So now my take on the Rwandan government being involved is that if they are really involved for the wrong reasons, it's because Goma, which is one of the big cities in the DRC. Now, Kinshasa is the capital, and the M23 group is actually advancing to taking over Kinshasa. But Goma is very close to Rwanda, right? And if Rwanda is indeed trying to play a Putin on us, right? If they do acquire Goma, they'll have access to a lot of mineral resources, which of course will enrich Rwanda, and they'll have control of so many things, including the exportation of those mineral resources. Now, this is if this is what they're trying to do, right? But we don't know yet. But again, you should be concerned your cell phone, right? Now, my take on this is that there needs to be dialogue, right? There's no way in heaven, hell, earth, or whatever it is, that the DRC should be a poor country. This is a country that has so many mineral resources. This country should be wealthy. This country gained its independence in the 60s from Belgium. And up till today, you want to tell me that. And again, I'm not trying to this is the same thing with almost every African country, right? Everyone gained independence in the 60s. And since the 60s, people are just going in circles and just doing nonsense, right? But since we're talking about the DRC now, here is my take on this, right? I think there needs to be dialogue. And President Ruto, who is the president of Kenya, mentioned this. Shout out to my Kenyans. I know that Ruto is not popularly liked in Kenya, but he made sense when he said there needs to be dialogue. And my thing is that African countries need to stop relying on the West, aka the UK, the EU, and the US to chief or to be in charge of their even the UN to be in charge of their mediation and also in charge of their peacekeeping, whatever. We have various regional blocks in Africa. There's ECOWAS, there is COMESA, there is SADC. Now, I don't want to, and there's the AU. I don't know if the AU is still in operation, but if it is, I don't want to believe that all these blocks are just there for fancy. I'm pretty sure that there's something that could be done to bring about a peace talk within the country and the M23 and Rwanda. Now, the president of Rwanda did make a statement that he does not negotiate with terrorists. My dear president, you are not a Western country. You are not a superpower. These so-called terrorists are taking over your country. So it behooves you to find a way to dialogue with these people so they don't take over your country and mess up the whole place and mess up the citizenry, right? There needs to be dialogue. You cannot say, oh, we don't negotiate with terrorists. You have a weak army. Nothing is being done. People are displaced in your country. People keep moving up and down. People are dying. Your whole infrastructure that you had is a disaster. So I think dialogue is the best thing to do. And there needs to be some kind of mediation within the bloc. And I think that the DRC is part of COMESA, if I'm not mistaken. So therefore, COMESA countries needs to have a dialogue and find a way to make sure that this stop happening. And for all of us who enjoy Coltan, by using our cell phones, we're making content. I think that everyone should be worried and kind of saying something and pushing this so there can be peace. And so that, we can continue to have Coltan. And also, just like blood diamond, something needs to be done to prevent us from using blood Coltan. I know there are various corporations who are behind all of this. If they are, you need to come and do something and say something and find a way to bring about some kind of peace so that people who are the ones producing these resources are benefiting from them. I know that corruption is the order of the day in most of these countries, which is the reason why most of these countries are suffering. Most of these countries, African countries, keep suffering from this nonsensical rubbish, I think. I don't understand why a country like DRC should be poor. I don't understand why a country like Nigeria should be poor. Why a country like so many of them in Africa should be poor. But the fact still remains that Africa has not been able to manage its resources to the benefit of its citizenry. In 2025, we are calling the African president to the front of the line. We need to do something. Something needs to be done to make sure that we become what we are meant to be, which is a powerhouse continent, because the continent of Africa have all the resources. We should be self-sustaining. We should be helping, not accepting help. So my take on this is that something needs to be done by these countries to be able to bring about some kind of dialogue and mediation within the continent, so this does not continue to go on. Now, the way forward, like I mentioned, is dialogue. I don't know if there's any other way. If you think there's something else, please feel free to comment. I'm willing to have the conversation with everyone who is listening, who is interested in such topics. And we'll continue to say these things with our full chest, because that's the only way.